All right, we did it. We had our podcast. There was 22 left, 21 left.
21.
And now
Are
where
we
are we?
deciphered?
Where are we?
Final 9, final table,
Final
baby.
table. There it is.
Let's fucking go.
Let's see how we go. Match up, and today is a special day because you and I are in the main event of the Club Marconi right here. This is a special episode where we are in a completely different. It's not really a studio, is it? But it's the setting.
Marconi Studio.
The Marconi Studio, yeah. So anyway, I've done enough talking. We're in the main event. You and I, 22 left. Are we going to win it?
21 left, I think.
21. Are you out already?
Yeah. No. I think it's 21. Pretty sure.
Okay.
Yeah, we are going to win it. Well, only one of us can win it. Hopefully we chop it.
That would be nice.
Yeah.
Are you kind enough to do a chop with me, though?
We'll see.
Look, man, yeah, it's really, really great to have you here. I want to pick your brain for the next 45 minutes or so. We've got an hour and a half until we start playing, and we're not on the same table, but we will be competitors at some stage, I'm sure. I want to know a little bit about your journey in this particular tournament, but before we get there, let's hear a little bit of your journey from when you and I were playing those cash games, and you've got really into tournaments, and you've had some great results. Tell us a bit, man.
Okay, cool. So firstly, I should say it's honestly such a privilege to be sitting here chatting to you on this podcast, because I remember when I started getting into poker, I really looked up to you. I think we had a pretty good conversation the first time we played together, and that was just when I'd started playing poker, and you had already accomplished so much. So yeah, sitting here is so cool.
It's my job to make my guests feel really welcome and loved,
I want to
not
chuck
the
that
other
out
way
there.
around.
Yeah, I know. I just got let me get that out of the way, and then I can talk about myself.
I appreciate that, man. That really means a lot. So thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, when we met, I think it was about 3.5 years ago or so, I'd say that was when I started to really get into playing poker. I started playing cash games at the casino, just 2-3. Didn't really have much, hadn't done any study, just kind of was working it out on my own. Had no ranges or anything, just if they were suited, I was opening it 7x, probably an absolute fish. But I was very aggressive. I just had I barreled and I put people in tough spots, and I kind of worked out certain exploits and stuff like that kind of on my own, I feel, just from volume, just from playing heaps, without doing any study. But still, if I was on a table with professionals, that'd probably be a big spot, But
I'm not so sure about that.
I think good players, I would be a spot to them at the time. But maybe just amongst the average player, I was still pretty capable of making some big moves and stuff. But yeah, I just kind of grew a big passion for the game. Was pretty much just playing. I played so much back then. I played really long sessions as well, sometimes more than 24 hours just at the start, just monster sessions, because I wasn't working at the time. I'd finished uni, so it was just a nice in between phase. And then I started working, I traveled a little bit, and then I got a full-time job as well, but I was always playing poker on the side. And
what were you studying at uni?
I did mathematics and statistics.
Of course.
Yeah.
Being a poker player, you need that. You need that to get, that's the creative thing that gets you going with all the numbers, right? That's really cool.
Yeah, having an analytical mind, I guess, and just kind of obsessing over games and systems is kind of what I've always been into. I used to play FIFA competitively as well when I was in my teenage years. So it's kind of a nice transition as well, that competitive aspect, going to tournaments and having to deal with the mental aspect of being under pressure and playing for money and stuff like that.
So were you playing FIFA for money?
Yeah, so back in 2013 and 2014, I was ranked Australia's #1 player at one point.
Wow.
And I played a tournament, played the World Championships in Las Vegas. Went to Singapore as well and played
FIFA. We're still talking about FIFA.
Yeah, for FIFA, yeah.
What? I didn't know anything of this.
Yeah, no, I guess not many people do. But yeah, I played some big games. I remember playing one game in Singapore. It was for the Asian Pacific Grand Final. They had the best players from Australia, Japan, and Singapore competing. And I lost the Grand Final, but it was for $10,000, and there was no second prize. It was just all or nothing, 10K. And I was 18 years old and in my first year of uni at the time, so 10 grand was like $1 million
It's
to
a
me
mini
now.
fortune.
Yeah, it was unbelievable amount of money, and and just playing that and losing as well, and making like a mental error, not a mental error, sorry, a technical error in the game. I basically did a bad pass which went to his player, and I felt like I was like dominated the tournament. I'd already beaten this guy before, and it just kind of like a costly mistake, and dealing with that mentally was really hard at the time.
So how did you deal with that?
Well, I think I just went back to my hotel room. I may have laid down on my bed and started crying. And then I just kind of watched the game again. Like I rewatched it 2 times that night, and just like analyzed how I played and things I could have done better and where it went wrong and stuff like that. And then I went out with my good friend Kieran, Mazda 255, and just went out drinking in Singapore and made the most of it.
Yeah, so you had this like really painful experience at such a young age when you're competing for a lot, and I'm sure, I mean, even now it probably might feel like this, but I'm sure at that age it felt like everything. You know, I felt like the world was caving in on you, because when you're engrossed in a game like FIFA or poker and you're competing, especially when it's for a lot of money, it really feels like the whole world is nothing, and that is it. And then when it goes badly or something happens, especially when it's your own error, it can be really crushing. So you then were able to have support from a friend to just be like, hey man, it's all good, you know, let's go and have a drink, let's just go and chill out. But you were still analyzing it.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Pretty much, yeah. And I kind of do that with poker as well. Like it'd be kind of parallel to like going into a final table with a big chip lead and blowing it and coming fourth or something, or third, which I've done 1 or 2 times before, and in like a big live event in a big spot, and it's similar. Like you feel like crushed, and I guess every time it happens to me, I just kind of like I'll rewatch the stream like pretty quickly. I want to watch it again and just see like, okay, did I make mistakes, or what hands did he have when I folded here, and just to kind of know like if I could have done things better and stuff like that, just to learn from it.
So you really have like a huge passion for the game theory side of things, whether it be FIFA or poker or whatever, right? Like there's something in you that really loves to analyze things, process things, and learn from your experiences.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, for sure. Like I try to be okay with making mistakes if I know I'm learning from those mistakes. I generally find it hard to deal with mistakes. Probably like one of my biggest mental game leaks in poker. If I like bust out of a tournament and I feel like I've made a mistake, I'm like killing myself for like that night, like to drive home, for example. I'm like burning. I'll get over it the next day, but I'm still burning that night. And as long as I can learn from it, okay, I shouldn't have done this here, then it's okay, you know?
So what is your actual learning process, right? So a lot of people who are into poker, especially the guys who are trying to step up from what you've done, you know, you've gone from these, you know, lower cash games to going up to these high stakes buy-in tournaments. What is it that you actually do? I mean, like, do you go back on your own play and just go, oh yeah, and you identify it yourself, or are you talking to friends, or do you have an upswing lab with the, you know, all the training courses? Like, people want to know, like, what do they do? What does it mean to study the game? What does it mean to go back over what you've done and know whether, because one thing that's tricky in poker is there's getting unlucky, there's making a mistake, which is an unforced error, and then there's getting outplayed.
Yeah.
And no one wants to admit that they were outplayed.
Yeah.
But often it's the case.
Yeah.
Right? So what is it for you? Tell me a bit about the process.
Yeah, so getting unlucky is okay. I guess like if you get unlucky, it's just kind of like, it's easy to deal with because it's like whatever, like that's just part of the game. Like if you can't accept the variance of the game, then you kind of shouldn't be playing the game, I guess. Like you kind of just have to deal with, you could lose 6 flips in a row and that's just the game.
So hold on that point. So do you accept that before coming into games? Is that how you work with that?
If I get knocked out today from like a big flip, let's say ace king suited versus queens or something like that, and it was just like, it is what it is, like there's nothing I did wrong, I'll be okay with leaving here in 20th place, say. Obviously I'll be disappointed, but like it is what it is, you know. But like if I make a move that was incorrectly calculated or something, then that would be harder to handle. And then being outplayed is another thing, and I guess just learning from that. But I should answer your original question, which was about how getting better and studying. Yeah. It kind of depends on the format of what I'm playing. So I guess it varies like over the years. I'd say the biggest thing is having like a network of people that you can talk with. It's probably the biggest thing. I'd say for me personally, that was one of the biggest changes in my own level, was just having a good group of friends who are all studying and playing regularly, and in like a very good collaborative like environment where we have like a group chat and we basically talk strategy and talk hands and support each other. And it goes beyond just the strategy, it's also like the actual support of it, because like it's hard like as a professional poker player, like to kind of like feel supported all the time, you know, especially when you're going through downswings and stuff. It can be quite challenging, but to have people who genuinely want the best for you and are genuinely celebrating your wins and like can sympathize with you on the losses, it makes a huge difference along the way, you know.
Well, it's sort of empathy rather than sympathy, I think, when it comes to the losses, because if they're fellow poker enthusiasts and they also have similar aspirations to you, then, you know, the feeling of I know what it's like to, you know, bust 20th when you had a good chip stack or whatever, you know. But hey, let's look at the statistics, the game theory. Let's look at all this and see how we can improve, right? So you're saying that you've surrounded yourself by like really great players who are enthusiastic about the game. They share the same passion with you.
Yep.
But did it start out like that? Because I know a lot of people like play poker and they actually feel quite lonely because they don't have people they can talk to about hands. Mm-hmm. And the other tricky factor is, even if you have someone you can talk to about hands, they may not be a good influence because their game theory knowledge may not be that great.
Yeah, that's true.
So what was it like for you? Did you start out with no friends, and then you know, how did you develop that?
Started out with no friends pretty much, and then met a couple other grinders that were playing 2-3, and we kind of formed a group and started talking. And I guess I feel really blessed to have these friends because they all kind of like work extremely hard and have all like transcended and moved up the ranks really quickly. So it's just nice to be in that environment. So I would say like look for people like that who have a really strong work ethic, because if you apply yourself to the game, you're going to get better at the game. It's as simple as that. Yeah, I don't think I know anyone who like all of the people I know who are most successful in poker are like also the hardest workers I know in poker, and that's not a coincidence. Like it's kind of like proof, you know, it's directly correlated. But of course, like there's still variance along the way and whatnot. But yeah, finding a good group of people to talk to. There's a whole bunch of training courses as well. Like I've looked at like different courses online and stuff. Studying with like PioSolver, more so for cash games. But like, yeah, that really like increased my understanding of the game. I started doing that like once I've quit my full-time job and decided to like give poker a proper shot. And yeah, that completely changed my understanding of like the way the game's meant to be played, like from a theoretical point of view. But like I said, I apply that a lot more for cash games because I think like when you're playing, especially live tournaments, it becomes a little bit more about just kind of, you don't need to be as balanced as you do when you're playing like online cash, you know?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think in live games, people are just way more susceptible to making just, you know, elementary errors, basically, whereas online it's a little bit more mechanical, and the quality of your opponents, even at like a 50-cent $1 cash game limit, is pretty tough, you know, to beat a game like that, let alone to also just beat the rake off a game like that.
Yeah, 100%. It's crazy. Like when I was living in Vienna last year and I was playing a lot of PokerStars, I was playing Zoom format, which is like, I think most people know what Zoom is, but it's basically just like a fast forward variant of poker.
It's for people who are addicted to dopamine. That's what Zoom is. Yeah.
No, it's for people that just want to play as many hands as possible.
Addicted to dopamine.
And yeah, I like that format because I think it's like it's definitely not the most profitable way of playing, but it's like in terms of improving and playing lots of hands, it's a very good way. And just
you're just dramatically going to get so many hands under your belt, right? I mean,
like
it's
thousands
just
of hands.
Just numbers. I actually always tell people this. I reckon I played more hands than Doyle Brunson within my first 2 years of poker because of how much I played online for so many tables.
Yeah, that's probably so true. Yeah, Doyle Brunson probably hasn't played that many hands because he's just been sitting at the live table. Yeah, but yeah, I was just going to say, like, you know, the comparison of like playing like even just like 100 NL Zoom on PokerStars, which is like $100 buy-in, and the quality of play on that is like way superior to any live cash game. Doesn't matter how big, like, you know, or even big buy-in tournaments and stuff. Like, it's just like on a completely different level, you know, which is really funny.
How have you made the transition then? I mean, if you've played a lot of this Zoom stuff and you've got a lot of those online hands under your belt, which are against tougher players who you expect mostly to not make that many mistakes, how do you translate that into the live games, especially here in Australia when Australians are notorious for being gambling poker players? Let's be real, we like to gamble, we like to chase draws and all that sort of stuff. It's ingrained in our culture. So how has that transition been for you?
Yeah, I think also in Australia, like, the average person has more money and is okay with losing money. You know what I mean? Like, they can go after work to the casino and it's almost like they're expecting to dump a buy-in. Like, you know, you get some people who will start off with $500 on the cash game table. And once it goes down to 200, they have this mentality of like, all right, I'm all in. Like, they just want to...
or re-enter, or like top up, or, you know...
They're just happy to piss it off before they go home, which makes it a really good environment to play poker. But... going to your question, it's actually not hard for me to transition from the online to the live because that wasn't my transition. I was actually, as I said, I started playing poker 2-3 live at the casino, and I was playing like street poker all the time. I didn't have any like much theoretical knowledge, like just like a little bit here and there, but like I was kind of trying to work things out and trying to like be max exploitative. So it was actually more... the transition was more from me going from the live to the online world when I started playing more online, like after I quit my job and stuff. That was a harder transition because I was used to not using ranges when I played and just kind of, or like having rough ranges, but like deviating like dramatically. Whereas realizing that I can't just keep like 3-bet bluffing with every like all these suited connectors in like these online streets because people just work out, you know, they got like HUDs and stuff and they work out completely over bluffing certain things. And so yeah, the transition for me was actually trying to discipline myself to play more like GTO and stuff like that. But the live streets is like kind of more where I feel comfortable. And I think that's why when I started playing live tournaments, I think that's part of the reason why I started doing pretty well in them in the last year, was because I already had this live cash game background and knew how people played kind of thing, or the reasons why people bet and the sizings they use, and being able to derive what kind of hand they have from the size that they've used, you know, because everyone's playing very unbalanced and you can kind of work that out.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting thing with poker in Australia, for example, because I think what you're describing is like this difference between, okay, we have, let's say that the average Australian poker player is more gambly than any other poker player in the world, which is arguably true, I would say. Then really playing GTO, for example, isn't going to be your highest way of making the most money. You're not going to yield the highest profit. You will yield the highest profit if you can exploit their mistakes, right? The reason why a lot of these top pros are playing as best GTO that they can is because if they're all playing that, then it just becomes a game of who's the best GTO player. But if you have people who are frequently making all sorts of fundamental errors, then you might want to exploit those, right? And it is tricky to make that transition, but I'm happy to see that you have.
Yeah, I guess like there's like, for example, like if someone, for example, is never folding, then like why would you bluff them, right? Like if they're literally going to call you down.
Yeah, no Nick Petrangelo chart's going to help you with that one.
Yeah, so just like, okay, just wait for a strong hand and value bet, right? Like, but even playing in like a really recreational field, say, I still think it's good to have like some kind of like GTO basis, because that way it makes people can't really work out what you're doing. So like if you're gonna say, for example, a certain board comes and you're gonna bet like your entire range, like 25% pot, say, it's kind of like no one will know whether you have it or not, and people won't be able to derive from your sizings the same way you can derive from their sizing. But then making just adjustments, I think, is important. Because like having that like fundamental, and then knowing, okay, well, this guy's going to call me down with third pair, so I'm not going to barrel aggressively here, or something like that, you know, like just making adjustments from from that fundamental basis, I think is important.
So you're saying that you have a base level of play that's unexploitable for the most part, with all the kind of mechanical, your starting ranges, your c-bet sizes and whatnot. But then as hands escalate to the turn and river where, it gets more serious, the pots get bigger, that's when we want to back off and not always follow, like, let's say a GTO line because old mate doesn't fold.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly that. Like, on the flop, I'm generally doing the same strategy against almost everyone. Maybe if it's a very exploitable scenario where I'm up against a very particular opponent, then maybe I might change my sizing for that opponent. But for the most part, flop will be very uniform, and then turns and rivers is when it starts to like really deviate.
Yeah, I think that's when most of the skill comes out on the turn and river, especially the river, because you can't really get sucked out on anymore. So it's like it comes down to how well you've assessed the hand to make maximum profit, to minimize losses, or to have maximum bluff opportunities. Right? I always tell the people I work with that you really want to focus on your post flop and basically turn and river play, because if you're adopting these strategies like min raising pre, c betting 15 to 20% pot, which is what a lot of people are doing, then you are just going to get to the turn and river a lot. So you really want to figure out how to play those streets.
Yeah.
And the reason why we have these small bets is to reduce variance, basically get maximum information for the smallest amount, right? I'd love to keep talking fundamental stuff, but that's not what this podcast is all about. This is all about mindset and peak performance. Mm-hmm. So I want to hear a little bit more about your story before we talk about your journey in this tournament.
Okay.
So you went overseas when the pandemic hit, or a bit after the pandemic hit, and then you played a lot of live tournaments, got a few results, and then you came back. What happened?
So I I moved to Vienna I left Australia in December 2020. So when I rocked up to Europe, it was still lockdown in Europe, and I spent 1 year there and played a lot of poker online.
Were you chasing a loved one?
Yeah. My girlfriend.
I just had to point that one out there.
There's a love story.
There's always a girl that someone's chasing.
Of course, we do stupid things for love.
That's it. Yeah, cool. So you went there and then you were playing live.
Yeah, I went there and I stopped working. I was working full time before that. So then once I stopped working, I had more time to devote to poker and other things I wanted to devote my time to. And I started playing a lot online and just like studying. And then I was playing in some like home games and stuff like that. And then I decided to travel around the European circuit a bit and go to some tournaments. Like I went to Bratislava first and made like little trips. I remember one particular month where I'd planned to go to Bratislava. I was like hadn't done like live touring before, so I didn't realize how intense this was going to be. It was kind of stupid in hindsight, but like actually not really stupid. It was actually worked out really amazing. But like I went to Bratislava and then straight away I ended up getting on like a train and went to Slovenia and played in Novogorica and then like played for a week there and then got on a flight to Estonia and played in Tallinn. Like the whole thing was like 30 days of like non-stop tournament poker, which I didn't realize how much of a grind that was. It was pretty intense, and like doing it alone as well, and just like being in new countries completely alone with no friends there, and that was pretty like draining. But I was fortunate to have like a good run. I won like a first tournament. The first tournament I played on the trip was a tournament in Bratislava, and I binked it, and I was like, damn, like that was such a good start to the trip. And then a week later, I came second in the main event in Slovenia, and then a week after that, 6th in the main event in Estonia and 6th in the high roller tournament as well. So it was just like an insane month for me, and but still really exhausting. But got so much experience out of that month, I guess.
Absolutely, man. I mean, like, you mentioned like in hindsight, maybe it wasn't, the greatest idea, but it's like, when you have a passion like what you seem to have, that's what you do, man.
Yeah.
You completely immerse yourself in an experience that's going to teach you, it's going to reward you, it's going to challenge you, and it's just going to be like, fun in some sense. Like, and I'm sure what December 2020 would have been, at a time where a lot of people weren't able to even really leave their homes. So to even have those experiences would have been just an absolute blessing. I'm kind of curious as to, I mean, you had a great win to start it. Do you think things would have been different if the first event didn't go that well? Like, did that boost like a sense of confidence for you, or did something change for you, or what happened?
Yeah, I'd say it definitely boosted confidence. Winning that first tournament was good. It was funny because like I had played a couple tournaments up until that point and hadn't really had. I'd had some deep runs, but never like had won one. And I remember thinking to myself, like, when is it gonna come? And then I think I said to my girlfriend like a few weeks before that tournament, I said something to her like, I'm wondering when I'm gonna bink like a first big tournament. Like I was wondering when it's gonna come. So it was kind of funny, a really funny timing. Like I felt like it was almost like a supernatural timing in the sense that like when the run came, it was like at the perfect timing for me for it to come. And that really boosted my confidence, yeah. And yeah, it just gave me confidence when I go into other tournaments now, that I can win the tournament. And also having played in tournaments where I'm like the short stack on the final table, say, and then coming back and winning it and stuff like that, also adds to the mental game of knowing that like the tournament is like a marathon and it's just about surviving up until the point where you're going to win the tournament, basically, you know. Like you don't need to be the chip leader for the whole tournament, you just need to be in the tournament.
I don't go by that mentality. I'm always trying to be the chip leader. I'm trying to win the tournament in every hand I play. It's sort of funny you say that because I noticed in this tournament that we're both in still, you really had a really like a difficult day too, getting like the momentum going, right? But you've really respected the equity, and every time I turned around and looked at your table, you sort of had like, you're still hovering around this kind of like just below average stack, which was about 25.
Far below. I was like 20 bigs.
Well, yeah. I mean, I was too busy trying to win the tournament on my table. But you know, and every time I saw you, you kept in like really good spirits, and you kept, you know, very optimistic, and you know, then you had a nice little run, and you know, you still got a little below average now, but that's probably your peak so far. So it probably feels really good, right?
I feel great. I got piles.
So tell us what happens in your mind then when you're going through, you've learnt these things on your trip, you've had many deep runs now, you've turned short stacks into trophies before. Now, is it starting to feel like, you know, things just are more in motion and it just feels a bit easier each time because things are more clear because of your experience? Or is it still an effort for you to really put yourself in that headspace?
It is somewhat still an effort. It's not like seamless. I'll have to like maybe listen to some certain songs maybe, or like take some breaths and like tell myself that just chill, you know, because like if you get down to like, let's say you get down to 15 bigs and you're like 4x below average stack or something like that, and it's very easy to like get a bit anxious about it and like just want to get your stack in, you know, make like a really light jam or something, but like you're not going to like, it's not the most profitable way to play in that scenario. So you just got to play the best way possible no matter what your stack is like all the time, and just kind of hope for the best, right? And so yeah, I guess like something I've learned is just being comfortable with having like, I can sit on a 20 big blind stack for 8 hours, like it's okay, you know. And I know you said before like you're trying to win a tournament, and I am too. Like I'm not playing to come 8th or anything. I'm always trying to win, and I'm quite aggressive in a lot of pots, and I can make some really big plays, but like you're not always going to have the chip stack. Like you might get cooler or something might happen, and you're going to be crippled at points in the tournament. You could just, big hand doesn't go your way, right? And then you've got to like just chill, and you've got to grind and, you know, catch the run kind of thing.
So it sounds like what you're saying is like, you know, when you're on this experience, when you're on this journey in a tournament, your stack is going to, you know, go up and down and up and down. And there are periods where it may just stay down for a long time. There are periods where it may go up for a long time. I think what's happening here is like, okay, so I might say I'm trying to win the tournament or whatever. And yesterday I was playing a lot more hands simply because I was fortunate enough to have had a bigger stack. So because I think when you have the chips to be able to do it, that's the strategy, right? But if I got unlucky, let's say, and lost a few hands and I was down to 20 bigs, I wouldn't be playing every hand.
Yeah, you got to chill.
I would be doing exactly what you had to do in your, you know, because of card distribution and because of stack preservation and, you know, so I really love what you're saying here, because like what you're saying sounds like no matter what your chip stack is, you really want to play as best you can from each decision. You don't just wait and just jam it in just because you're getting impatient or you feel like you're shorter than others. With 15 big blinds, there's still a lot of play in there.
Yeah.
People don't realize that.
Even 6 bigs.
Yeah. There are. You know, you can do all sorts of tricky stop and goes and stuff from the big blind, or like, you know, like there's a few things you can be doing that is not just shove poker.
Yeah.
I think you're right. I mean, especially in these main events where, let's say today in our tournament, the average stack is I think 800k. Blinds are starting at 10k, 20k. So the average stack is 40 big blinds, but if someone has 300k, or 350, they feel like, oh, I'm so much shorter than all these 1 million chip stacks around me. I've got to do something.
Yep.
But if you just play each hand as optimally as you can, at some point you might get a rush. Most likely you will if you're actually patient and playing every hand as best you can.
Yep.
Rather than just over-shoving pocket sixes from like middle position for 16 bigs just because, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, yeah. I like that.
Like yesterday, having a pretty tough day too, and I was 20 bigs for like almost the whole day, and yeah, like every time I did get the chips in, I got it in good, like ace king versus king queen or something. You know, like I always picked the right spot, and could get unlucky and get knocked out of the tournament if the queen hits, say. But like you're pushing equity, you have like the advantage, you know. So yeah, just hope for the best.
That's all you can do.
Yeah,
you know.
And if I had like a stack like yours on day 2, I would be opening very aggressively and playing like very aggressively, because that's what I do. But like you're not always going to be able to do that, and if you're not in that position, you just have to chill, and yeah, it'll come.
So okay, so then if we've come to the conclusion that the best strategy really long term in these main events, for example, is to make sure you're playing each stack as optimally as possible. Mm-hmm. How do you prepare your mind for that? How do you prepare for the emotional swings? Because it's all easy for us to sit here and say that. But when you're in game and, you know, you might get unlucky or you might make a mistake, which is something you said is one of your like toughest things to deal with.
Yep.
How do you pick yourself up in the very next hand and just make sure you don't make mistakes?
Yeah, it's not, that's the hard part, is moving on quickly. If I can listen to a good song that will kind of G me up, I have like a playlist of songs that...
What's in it? Britney Spears?
No, Britney
Celine
Spears.
Dion?
No, neither of those.
Backstreet Boys? Come on, man.
Justin Bieber.
Okay, actually, yeah. I don't mind that.
No, I'm actually joking. I don't know, different songs, like a diverse mix. I like to listen to mainly listen to classical music when I'm playing. But like, there are some particular songs, like, for example, The Ecstasy of Gold is one song, which is like a proper battle song that I'll listen to a lot. Yeah, I don't know, there's a bunch of songs, and if I kind of need to hear something at a particular point to get me in a certain mood, I'll rely on music. I also have some phone notes that have things that I've written down to myself in the past, like maybe on break or maybe before a final table day, where I write like in my phone notes and just kind of like a self-talk and like a pep talk to myself. And I have those phone notes from like, you know, from different tournaments I've played. So sometimes I'll go through and just read a note that I wrote to myself on a particular day in a tournament that still resonates with me and speaks to me, you know.
Tell us more about that. Like, I'm curious about that. That's that relationship with yourself, that self-talk. You know, that desire to express yourself to yourself for your future self to read back, and it helps you somehow.
So there's like two sides. There's like the technical side, and then there's like the more motivational, like you can do it side. The technical side might just be some really simple reminders, like things that you should be doing that you can forget in game. So maybe something like to always make sure that your next decision is going to be an easy one. Like if you choose to 3-bet a hand, you should know what's gonna happen if the guy shoves on you. Like, is it a disaster? Like you didn't want him to shove, then maybe you shouldn't have 3-bet that hand, for example. Stuff like that. Like maybe just some like little cues that to remind me of just some fundamentals. It could be a note telling me to just like observe everything. Like don't like sit there on Facebook or something. Like watch every action and pick up as much information as I can from players playing pots and things like that. And then it could also be stuff like just reminding myself that the tournament is a roller coaster, like what we were saying before. The chips, I might get crippled and go from 60 bigs to 6 bigs, and it's okay. Like this is going to happen in the tournament. Like it's
giving yourself a bit of perspective and a bit of like sense of like, you know, what we talked about before with the acceptance. Like the acceptance of I'm going to sit down and play a game that has a lot of variance. No matter what I do, sometimes I'm going to lose hands, sometimes I'm going to win hands, whatever. But reminding yourself of that. First, there's the first step is the expression of it, right? So you're writing it down after it's happened in maybe a previous tournament, or maybe it happens today, and then your future self next week in another tournament gets to look back on this and feel put, let's say, at ease based on your last experience, right? Because you're just not going to win every tournament you play, obviously, right? But a lot of people feel that they will. there's this weird. It's like the gambler's fallacy. They feel like as soon as they buy in, that's it. I'm going to win.
Right.
And then, but
do you
then
think most people feel like that?
I think people subconsciously feel like that. That's
Okay.
the gamblers. It's the, it's like you go and sit at a poker machine.
Yeah.
People think they're going to win. Otherwise, why would they be sitting there? There's a subconscious acceptance that they will win, but deep down, they really, well, not even deep down, almost on the surface, they know they're not going to win.
Right. Okay.
But there's a subconscious thing that makes them feel like they are going to win.
Okay. That subconscious thing is what gets them to play the tournament, you're saying, but you're saying that they might not necessarily really believe that they're going to win?
Well, put it this way. You buy into a tournament, and let's say you start with, what was this tournament? We started with like 50K. The reality is, for you, even if you're the best player in the tournament, you're only going to cash maybe 1 in 6, and that's pretty good. 1 in 7 maybe. That means that even if you're the A++ best player in Australia, you're still only going to cash 15 or 20%. But when you buy in, you've prepared yourself, you've driven all the way from this side of the country to the other, or this side of the city to the other, and like we do that not because we think we're going to lose 80% of the time.
Yeah, we're almost psychotic for doing that because
it does sound a bit psychotic.
Yeah, like the last couple weeks, the last few weeks I haven't been doing too well. The last like 2 weeks or so, 3 weeks, and it feels crazy. Like I'm literally driving every time to a tournament, busting out, and like it's like, how am I putting myself through this? But at the end of the day, if you're playing a long-term game, so you just got to keep showing up and playing your best. But I guess like having a belief, it's kind of like believing that you're going to win, but not expecting to win. I think is like what I try to do, because if I start to expect anything, it leads to like too much disappointment on like short-term variance, right? Like you could just have a couple bad weeks or whatever, and if you're expecting, then you lose like your love for the game. Like I don't know if you've ever felt like this, like if you've had like a string of bad results and then you're sitting at the table and you get sucked out on or something, and you're sitting there like actually not enjoying the game anymore. I've had that happen to me a few times, and that's when I'm like, that's like a warning sign to me, like, hey, like I'm doing this because I love the game. So at that point I'll try and tell myself to like start talking to people more at the table, or like get a bit more excited by the bad beats or whatever, and just kind of like laugh at them and try to enjoy. If someone does something completely stupid which makes no sense and they win the pot, like smile with them and laugh with them and say like, like whatever. You have to be snarky and make them feel like they haven't played well or something like that, right?
Yeah.
So just like enjoying the whole vibe, the whole atmosphere, talking to people, like reinvigorating my love for the game is like is important, and yeah, but still believing that I'm going to win is also really important. Like I'll generally go to every tournament thinking that, not expecting it, but thinking I'm going to win, like visualizing myself winning, like imagining the final table and imagining how I'm going to win. Or like if I'm sitting on the final table, I'm literally looking around, or like before a final table, if they have like the chip stacks on the page and the people with the seat draw, I'm like, I spend quite a bit of time thinking about scenarios that could come up with certain opponents I know and certain stack dynamics, and how I'm going to apply pressure or how I'm going to win, basically. So I'm always like visualizing it, but like just removing the expectation of winning, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense. Let me see if I can wrap that in a nice bundle for the people listening. So I guess there's this acceptance around the variance of the game, so that we know that no matter what happens in any one individual game or hand for that matter, you could win or lose. But long term, we're believing in ourselves. And if we go into every game with the belief that we're going to win every game, it gives us a sense of like a killer mentality. But there's another side of it, which is the realistic, like, I'm not going to win every game, but I'm enjoying the process. And if I stick to the enjoyment of the process and the challenges of each micro decision, then the long-term picture is going to see me as a winner, because it has to. If I work hard and I study, and if I talk to my friends and I'm constantly with the growth mindset, and I keep my health, my mental health, and my mindset in the right place, it's only a matter of time and volume, because volume's a really big issue, because a lot of people, especially people that I work with privately, they might get a few sessions with me, and then within 3 to 6 months, they'll say, I haven't had any results. And I say, how many tournaments have you played? And they say, I play this one tournament every week, and sometimes I missed it. And I'm like, okay, so in 4 or 5 months, you've played like 15 tournaments. It's not enough.
Yeah.
You know, if I play online, for example,
That's
I'll
like
play 15 tournaments in the
in
first
1 day or
couple of
something,
hours,
yeah.
and then I'll bust out and buy into another 15. So you need a lot of tournaments, and you know, then you can know that if you're focusing on all these micro decisions, enjoying the process, then it's just inevitable. You know, if you continually work hard.
Yeah.
That's what I think, anyway. I mean, obviously there's a natural ingrained talent aspect of this game too.
Yep.
Similar to like Ronaldo, you know, like no one, like there are people who have trained just as hard, if not harder, than Ronaldo.
Yep.
But he's got something in him, and that's the same for poker, I think too.
Yeah. 100%.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, I completely agree with everything you just said. And I think there is an instinct. I think there's like there is like a natural. It could be the way you perceive the game. It could be the way you understand the theory of the game. But it could also just be like your instinct as well. Like having the ability to follow through on like an instinct and do something really like bold and ballsy and like that Adamo instinct kind of thing. You know, like. So there is like a natural psychopath instinct, I think, that needs to come out as well. But like generally, like what you said, if you like work hard at the game and you enjoy the game and you're putting in volume, you're going to realize your EV or hopefully you realize your EV.
Well, I think another thing to point out here is like not a lot of people only play poker, right? So let's say this main event that we're in. 300 and something entrants. Actually, there's probably less than 300 and a lot of re-entries, but let's say 300 people, probably like 75 to 80% of them have other forms of jobs or income or whatever. So really, at the end of the day, this is a hobby for almost all of us, except for maybe 5 to 10% who are actually making serious money from the game. So let's compare it to other hobbies. Golf, you know, tennis, whatever, you're going to spend a whole lot of money on green fees and equipment fees, and you're going to spend a lot of time out there on the course. If you're going to play poker and spend all these hours and you're going to travel and you're going to spend all your money, you know, by the end of the year, most people are going to lose. At least you want to enjoy the process of being challenged, and every now and then you might have a decent final table or something like that. But, you know, you do need to enjoy the process because it's a beautiful game. It challenges us. It's social. Not a lot of people in the world even get the opportunity to be here at all. So, like, you know, people who think that they're unlucky because they got two outed, it's like, well, think again, because, like, you got two outed in a poker tournament for, like, $1,000. How many people can even say they could buy into a poker tournament for $1,000, right? Like, so I think us poker players often can fall into this trap of, like, being ungrateful, let's say, or feeling, you know, what's the right word? Like, you know, you almost take it for granted, these opportunities and these experiences. I've really come to this, like, it's not a realization. It's more of an epiphany after this pandemic, because, you know, I had an abundance of opportunities. I traveled a lot for tournaments and all this, and even with online poker. But then slowly, online poker got taken, and then travel got taken, and then all these mandates came in, and it's like, man, now I'm just happy to be here, touching some cards and having, you know, some banter with people and playing cards. Like, it's fun, right? Like, I'm really happy to see that you're immersing yourself in this whole experience, and it is quite visceral, I think, when you do what you're doing. And yeah, I'm loving to see your journey. I hope you go easy on the final table on me in this one.
Well,
today.
we're not even on the final table. We've got to get there first.
Yeah, well, I see. This is the belief. I know that we're going to get there, right? So that's after our conversation, I've learned something from it. So tell us, we got 21 left, or 22. I'm pretty sure it's 22, but you might be right.
I think it's 21.
All right. Okay, 21.
Side bet.
What's your... I'm not making side bets here. The only side bet I'm making is the one to actually win the tournament, which I've already got the money on the line. So you've got 750K,
Yeah,
bit under 40 bigs.
I think.
What's your mentality coming into today?
I'm just going to play my game. I'm going to chill. I'm not going to like try and rush anything. I think it's going to be still a long way to go. It's going to be long. Average stack is 40 bigs, and nobody wants to bust early, so it's going to be a grind. So I'm going to be patient. Hopefully, win some big pots, accumulate a stack, get to the final table, and step it up from there and try to make a good run to the victory.
And I love the smile that you have as you say this. You know, it's part of
dream.
what we're talking about. It is, you know, it is.
It keeps it exciting. That's the beautiful thing about tournament poker. It's like, you know, you're constantly like that feeling of like where you're making the final table and you're looking up at the screen and the numbers are dropping, or and you see the payout, and that's like so much adrenaline. It's so exciting.
It is exciting, and
Yeah.
I want to know what you've done today. Tell us what your day looks like coming into the serious end of the tournament, the business end. That's what I was looking for.
My day wasn't nothing crazy. I just I woke up really late. I woke up probably close to 12 p.m. Had like a really nice sleep in. Spent some time with my girlfriend. Watched Arsenal destroy Leicester City. I did a tiny bit of revision of some notes that I've written down for like the end game of a poker tournament, like just some ICM stuff. I'm not like learning heaps or like on day. I'm just like looking at the notes and getting some, some refresher.
Well, you're in the game right now. Like, I actually don't think it's a good idea to try and learn anything right now.
Yeah.
Going into this, like you're just on a bit of a, let's call it quarter time or something, like in between days. Like when you're in the experience, you need to focus on the performance side of things. And I think it's great that you're making these notes and whatnot, because then you can come back after the tournament and you can review things. You can talk to your friends about them or whatever, right?
Yep.
I love that you're still doing that, because a lot of people like get to this side of the tournament and they forget to do that. And it's like, no, this is the time, if ever, to do that.
Yeah,
right?
This is really vital. Like increasing your edge by like 1% now translates to like an extra 1% of equity in the prize pool, say. So like everything you do, like I meditated this morning as well. If anything I can do that's going to increase my, my ability to perform, can translate to like a huge monetary difference. And it's not just about the money, it's also just like result of the tournament, because like at the end of the day, this is like a bit of the competitiveness in me that kicks in as well. Like there's something really satisfying about winning the tournament. Like I'm not really a big fan. Like I don't know, like I have done chops in the past, and like, but even if we chop, even doing like an ICM chop, I kind of still want to, I don't like to just stop playing. I want to see the end of the game, because it's an exciting like thing, the final table. It gets like short-handed and like it just starts moving really fast, and just like from like respecting the game kind of thing, like it's fun to get to the end of it, So, yeah.
I like that mentality, because a lot of people can, if you're not careful, the default is stress and anxiety, right? So you come into this tournament, there's a lot of unknowns, stack sizes are more shallow than at the start of the tournament, and people get uncomfortable with that. And, you're going to be 3-bet light, you're going to have hands that are really awkward to play. But people feel, if you don't do anything with your perception, if you don't consciously come in with a certain, using psychological tools, the default in my experience and opinion is that negative stuff. It's the anxiety, it's the fear, it's the, you feel scared almost, right? But if you come in, you go, you know what, it's going to be fun. This is going to be challenging. I'm excited because like I've been working so hard, and not only have I played hard for 3 days and got myself here or whatever, 2 days, but my whole career up until this point. And then I know as well that if I can increase myself by 1%, like what you said, then, there's heaps of tournaments coming up, and those tournaments I'm going to be better at. Right, because we're doing what we said at the start of this podcast, right? We're looking at the big picture. We're looking at the long term. How can I win at this game long term? Yep. And this is where it happens, whereas people, I think, can get complacent and they just come in and try and autopilot their way through. But that leads them to make really, really micro but crucial errors.
Yeah.
At the crucial time.
Yeah, now is not the time for autopilot. Now is the time to be like hyper focused and aware of like trying to be aware of every single thing, people's emotions, even how they're feeling, like with their stack to mood ratio, like how they're feeling about this.
I've never heard that one. That's good. Usually it's stack to pot ratio, right? But stack to mood ratio, that's a good
stack
one.
To mood, like how are they feeling about their stack right now after losing a pot, say, or are they starting to feel anxious, or what do these pay jumps mean to them, and thinking all these things when making a decision. But yeah, like I guess like going back to what you said about the default being stress, I think the default is stress. Even with everything we've been talking about, like it's still really stressful. Like there's going to be times I know today where I'm going to get stressed out and I'm going to have to like reground myself and stuff. And I remember like I played a tournament I won a tournament actually 2 months ago at APT in Brisbane, the grind, and I think like it was an absolute roller coaster of final table for me. Like I went from like big stack to short stack. Like I was swinging like crazy, and then at the end when it was like 3 or 4 handed, I had like all the chips, and everyone was thinking I'm gonna win, and it got heads up, and I had like this huge chip advantage on this guy. Like this guy had like 10 bigs or something, and I had like all the chips, and then he doubled up for me twice, and then he started like getting a rush of hands, and you know when you're playing heads up, like there's a lot of variance, and like the momentum can swing really fast, you know. And he ended up getting it back up to. We got up to even stacks, and I think at one point he had a bit more than me. And I remember feeling in that moment like I started stressing. Like I was like, oh my god, like it's not just coming second now. It's about having that chip lead when we're heads up, and if I blow it now, it's going to look like it's going to appear to be the biggest choke ever, and I'm going to remember this. And I started to get really anxious about that. I started like stressing. Thank God it swung back around, and then I just like.
How did you keep your cool then? To if it was stressing you so much.
I can't say I did keep my cool. I don't know. Like I did get stressed, and I started to think like shit. This guy's gonna. I started to think that maybe he was a lot better than he was, and that's no disrespect to him. I'm not saying he wasn't a good player, but I haven't played with him long enough to know if he's really that good a player or not. But when he started coming back, I started to think to myself, it's like this guy's been hustling us. Like he's just all of a sudden like playing now. Yeah. Like he started 3-betting me like relentlessly, and like he was the most passive player the whole final table. And then he just started. I think he actually had picked up hands, but like you don't know what their whole cards are. So if he picked up ace king 2 hands in a row and 3-bet me twice in a row, I'm like, is this guy just?
What's he up to?
Is he coming out for me now? Like, I started like, I was really in my head about this. And then luckily I won some hands and stuff. But I didn't really know how I can answer how I kept my cool. I just tried to play my game, I guess, and not lose my head and not do anything crazy, not do anything too stupid. But yeah.
I'm going to give you a little tip here for all my 14 years of experience in tournaments, because that's happened to me a lot. Like, whether it be online or live, I've come second in tournaments and blown chip leads. I've bubbled final tables and blown chip leads. But, obviously I've also done well and won things as a result of, playing the way I play. My tip here is if you're finding yourself in this situation where things are turning and, you might have had an 8-1 chip lead heads up, and you're thinking, I'm only, one small step away, and you feel like you've won already. And then the guy starts making a comeback, and you're like, fuck, what do I do? My tip here is to slow down. Like, slow down as much as you possibly can. And I mean that, like, in the sense of, like, time. So, if you notice this happening and you feel something in your chest, that's where your anxiety is often, for most people, that's where it sits. You slow down, right? So, next time it's your turn to act, you just spend a minute of your time bank and just start breathing. Don't even think about your hand. Like, it seems weird, but for me, this is what I'd prescribe for people, because it's going to shift something, right? So it's like the person that goes on tilt or not. There's this thing that we have in psychology. It's like a stimuli and a response. So something will happen and you'll have a response, and usually it's a reaction. So let's say I slap you in the face. Your immediate reaction is going to be like, whoa, what the hell, man? Why'd you do that? But if I slap you and then you sit there for like 10 seconds and think about it, you'd be like, oh, Brendon's just mucking around, because I'd start laughing or whatever, Right. So what we want to do is we want to create a bigger gap in between something that happened, so like an event, and how we respond to that. And the only way to do that is through time.
Yep.
But in that time, you might want to get a bunch of oxygen in your system. Mm-hmm. You might want to slow your breathing down so that you can think clearer. Because if you just keep going in the motions, you'll just fall into mistake after mistake after mistake, and then you will have actually blown that 8-1 chip lead.
Yeah. Yeah, I can definitely agree with that. Just taking some big, deep breaths, taking your time on every action, just slowing it down. Like you said, creating a gap, the stimulus to response. 100% agree with all that. And even just like counting out a chip stack, like something I do sometimes, like if it gets too fast and like I want to like know like how many chips I have, I'll get dealt my cards, and I won't look at my hand. I'll just start counting my chips and say, hang on, I want to see how many chips I have, just to slow it down. Because, when you're playing short-handed, you lose track of how many chips you have and how many chips your opponent has, because every pot changes and then the cards get dealt to you. And for me, I really need to know that information before I'm playing a hand. So, like, that can add to the stress of it a bit. Like, it's just moving so fast, So, yeah, just slowing down, counting the chips, taking some deep breaths. Yeah.
And I think a lot of this comes pre-game as well. Like you mentioned that you meditate, and a lot of people who follow my podcast here know that I am all about visualization meditations, and there's a free one on here for people to give it a try. And I'm also going to plug that I do personalized ones. If anyone wants them, you can, and I create them with like the person's personal struggles, and we use the dialogue to help them meditate before their games based on their own personal experience. But what I love about the fact that you do that is because what I love, let me say that again. What I love is that you do that because when you are in this situation, the game will inevitably challenge you at this point, you've practiced. So it's a rehearsal. Like actors rehearse before they go on stage. Musicians rehearse before they go on stage. When you play poker, you're going on stage. It's a performance. And especially when you're in high equity spots and everyone's watching you when it's your turn to act. So you might want to do something in the sense of rehearsing how you're going to do that. And that's where the pre-game stuff helps you. So when you're in it, your body and your mind has more of an automatic response rather than that default reaction, I suppose.
Yeah.
So I think that, the pre-game meditation stuff is great. I love that you do that.
Yeah, 100%. If you're meditating every day, say, then your default might be to be a bit more like in the moment and being able to breathe and know it's okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's cool, man. So let's see. We're going to wrap it up now because we have half an hour before we are going to play in the biggest tournament of our life.
What are you going to do now for the next half an hour?
I am actually going to go and get a massage. I saw a masseuse walking around. I'm going to get like a 15-minute head rub. I'm going to put on my earpods and get a nice meditation in,
right,
given that we're talking about it.
So if I want to mess with you now, I'll go and take her from you and get a massage or something like that?
No, I've already booked it. I've already booked it. Or have I? Maybe I haven't.
Maybe you're just saying that.
I'm bluffing already. The game hasn't even started. Look, man, do you have any last words that you want to share with people? Or actually a good question for you. What would you tell your future self right now in poker? Let's say right now to Adam in 6 months' time. What would you tell yourself?
In 6 months' time, tell myself. I'm not sure. It's a very hard question to answer. I just hope you're still enjoying the game and crushing it. I don't know.
You hope, or that's something you want to say.
Yeah.
Keep enjoying the game.
Keep enjoying the game, and keep working hard. I guess. I hope that I'm still working really hard and enjoying the game. Yeah.
Simple, sweet, but it's straight to the point. I like it. Yeah. I think it's good, and I think from a counseling perspective, just to finish off here, one question that we often ask clients is, if you were on, not so much your deathbed, but if you were in your 80s, what would your 80-year-old self say to you now? Because what it does is it externalizes your experience. So it'll say to you, okay, I'm 32 today, or yesterday I was. What would I want to look back on my 30s and say I was, happy about, or how can I feel less stressed or anxious about life? Because we go through experiences that are stressful by our choice and not by our choice.
Yep.
But often we look back and there's a lot of really bad things that can happen to us that we can be like, you know what? Kind of glad that happened to us. Mm-hmm. That to me, because I learned from that, or that experience helped me grow or whatever. But when you're experiencing it, it's so stressful and painful. So anyway, I like to use that as a tool to help me relax in the moment, to think about how I want to behave in the here and now.
For your future, yeah.
Yeah, how do I want to look back and know that I spent my life and treated other people and treated myself and all that?
I think that's a better question to answer than the reverse of what would your older self say to your younger self? And actually, it made me think of something that kind of answers this question a little bit. Everything that I've ever regretted in my life, if I look back at certain chapters in my life, it could be anything. It could be university, it could be a job, it could be a past relationship, it could be the way I treated certain friends, or literally everything. The big regret always is the same theme, which is that I wish I just gave it more. I wish I put more into it in the moment while I was there. instead of being distracted by other things and thinking I'll get around to doing it later and not really coming back and doing it. And I think then if I apply that to my current chapter, which is poker, I would say from my older self to me now, like, give it your all now, because you might not be playing poker your whole life when you're 60 years old, and then you look back one day and say, you know what, I wish I spent more hours studying, or I wish I, whatever it is, that I think is going to help me transcend and get even better. So I think just giving it more,
I love that, man, because I think a lot of people need to hear that. Like, because I think a lot of people just fall into the trap of just playing all the time, and then 5 years passes them, they don't get the results they want, and then they're thinking that they're just unlucky. But it's like, well, did you really put the effort in? Did you try and expand on your knowledge? Did you try expand on your skills? Like, mostly people don't, I think. Yeah. It requires effort. And this is where, and I won't get too much into it because this discussion could go for ages. You and I, we got too much chemistry, Adam. But like, it becomes spiritual,
yep.
Because it becomes like, well, I only have one life here. How do I want to spend it? Do I want to perform my best? Do I want to do the best I can for myself and the people around me? How do I want to behave in society? How do I want to treat people when things aren't going well? Is a really good one to ask yourself. How do I want to treat people? How do I want to be known? How do I want to be seen? No one likes it when someone loses a hand and berates someone else.
100%.
It's like
100%.
Yeah.
Like, how do you want to be perceived by others, and what kind of energy you're giving off to other people? If I bust out of a tournament, can I like look at everyone and say good luck and good game, and not berate anyone who sucks out of me or anything like that? Just being a general nice person at the table and talking to people and treating everyone, even like people who are completely bad at poker, like with the same amount of respect that I'll treat someone who's really good at poker. Talking to the waitresses and all the staff in the same way and being nice, and yeah, I think that's really important as well.
I love it, man. And there's no wonder we have such good chemistry. It seems like we align in values, and I think that's a great place to leave it. It's been amazing having you on here. I'm glad we finally got this going, because we did try for a month and a half or so to get down here. Good luck today. Play well, enjoy the process, and I am looking forward to posting this afterwards, saying that we got first and second.
I hope so, man. I sincerely hope that we both have really deep runs today.
It'll be awesome,
and I
man.
really hope we're both on the farm table. It'll be so sick.
Awesome,
and
man.
It's been such a privilege to be on this podcast, really.
You're welcome, dude. It's been great having you here.
Thank you.
Good luck, man.
Cheers, bro.
My man, Adam Kharman, we're here. We've finished the tournament, and we are here to congratulate you for your second place finish. I finished 9th, but I am so stoked for you to you almost got the job done, but well done, man. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. It's a bit bittersweet to almost get it done. I feel like I survived for so long and really fired up towards the end of the tournament, but I can't complain with second place. It's fantastic.
Man, like the earlier things we were talking about in our podcast episode before we got into that final 21, you really managed the equity of your medium to low stack for so long, and you've managed to turn that into a second place finish. So I understand it's bittersweet. I know the feeling of coming second. I've had it many times in big spots. Well, all poker players want to win, but man, you've done so good. Congratulations. Tell us what it's like, man. Like, what was that final table like? I got out in the third hand and I was done and dusted on my way home.
Yeah.
Tell me what it was like for you.
Maybe it was a blessing that one of the most capable players sitting on my direct left, being you, busted out in 9th, because it probably made the final table smoother for me. But
you're welcome.
Yes, thank you, Brendon. It was tricky, like navigating. I had like a pretty short stack, like most of the final table. When we were 8-handed, it went for an unbelievable amount of time. It was like, I think we played like something like 4 hours maybe, or 3-4 hours 8-handed. Like nobody wanted to bust, and everyone was playing really tight, and there was just no coolers. It was really bizarre, and the blinds went up, and everyone's stacks kind of decreased in size. Like the average stack was now like 20 big blinds, and the big stack had like 40 big blinds or something like that. So it was still anyone's game. And yeah, it was nice. Just eventually people started busting, and I think I was the shortest stack for most of the time. Or like if there was like 5 people left, I was 4th or 5th. If there was 6, I was 5th or 6th. So just navigating that, and when there was about 5 people left, I started to get a bit more aggressive. I felt like well, I don't really want to bust out in fifth, but I kind of going to start pushing. People weren't really calling all ins and stuff like that, so I just started jamming a bit lighter, and yeah, just whacking it, and that was good because picked up some blinds and kept myself in it, and yeah, it was really nice once it got down to like 5-handed. It really sped up, and there were some interesting hands, and we got heads up, and I think I was now the chip leader slightly. I had like a bit more chips, and yeah, I was really happy with the way I played heads up for the most part, but there was a couple of big hands where I may have like I ran a really big bluff. One of the hands that pretty much ended things was I just ran a really huge triple barrel bluff. I think like it was a nice hand to do it with, but I mean, when you get snapped off by 2 pair, it's like, you know, it doesn't look so good, but maybe if you just had 1 pair, it would have been nice. And yeah.
We have, I wanted to just have this as like a summary so people can see, you know, what your experience was on the final table. And I think that we have time for 1 hand. And if there's any hand, you got to tell us what that hand was. So
yeah,
let's go through the details.
So
you were heads up?
We were heads up. My opponent limped, and I decided to ISO 9-5 offsuit, which isn't something I do every time, but like mixed frequency. And he
stack depth.
The depth would have been around, I think it may have been around 30 to 40 big blinds effective, roughly. I can't remember exactly. The flop came A7-2 rainbow. We bet 20% pot. He calls. The turn was a 6, bringing a flush draw. So now we have a gut shot. We don't have a heart, so which was kind of influences my river decision. I bet about 40% pot. He calls, and then I was like kind of planning in my head to give up on a lot of rivers at this point. But then I got the 10 of spades on the river, which is a pretty good river for me to represent like the straight, like 8-9 nut straight. And I'm blocking the 9, so I just thought, let's go for it, and let's put all his any backdoor flush draws that missed, or any 1 pair ace-x in a really bad spot, and I ripped it in, and he called me with ace deuce, so he flopped 2 pair. So I feel like yeah, like I mean, I can look at the hand again and stuff, but I feel like it's an okay bluff to run. I wasn't like disappointed. It's like in myself for making it, but I was kind of felt also like it's a high variance thing to do, you know, like I had like a chip lead at that point. I could have just like chilled maybe and waited for a bigger spot, but who knows, maybe I'd get cooler the next hand, kings into aces or something. So yeah, you never really know what can happen.
No, look, I think heads up is a completely different game. I mean, you know, you're starting to see this the more and more that you run deep in these tournaments, and the dynamics of playing short-handed, you know, when there's 2 tables left, going from like, you know, a full ring game to 8-handed to 7-handed, 6-handed, 5-handed, then a final table and you're going down to 3-handed and then heads up. The game changes dramatically, and if you want to win a tournament, I think that you have to be willing to pull the trigger with hands and situations like what you've done, because otherwise you are just waiting around for just some miracle flip that you're going to win and then you win the tournament. It's like, you don't really want to do that because you're just going to get bled by good players.
Yeah.
So the bluff that you've run here, to me, makes perfect sense. You know, your story checks out. Every part of the way anyone would believe that story, and I think that his weak range there by flatting, like limping in and then flatting the raise and then, you know, flatting the whole way. He does have a lot of like, what you said it was like A7-2,
Yeah.
right? Or A6-2.
8-7-2,
So
yeah.
like, so he probably has a lot of like maybe king highs that turn flush draws and brick.
Exactly.
He's got a lot of like 6x. He's got 7x hands. He's got some deuces in there.
Yeah.
Like there's so much
some
in there.
straight draws that pick up a flush draw, and even just like if you have a hand like ace-4 off, what do you do when you get to the river and the guy like just jams on you after he's bet big on the turn and you've called? Like, I would find it very difficult to just call with 1 pair, you know. So I just kind of ran into a strong part of his range, I guess.
And look, that does happen sometimes, and I think any really successful long-term player has a billion stories of where they get caught out bluffing in these spots.
Yep.
But there's 10 million stories of when they're just really cleaning up all these pots that go uncontested and not go to showdown, and then, you know. So look, man, I think that you've done what I would say is a pretty effective play to try and win a tournament. And there's always so many dynamics with heads up stuff anyway, right? Like you're playing this mono stuff back and forwards for hours, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm like you said, it's you got to kind of go for it in some spots, and that's one thing I kind of walked away feeling happy about was that I went for it. I played for the win, and I'm proud of myself for doing that. Like to even just to fire a big bluff with like $30,000 pay jump, you know, that's something that I want to feel proud about that, and making the decision to go for the win, and putting him in a tough spot and really like being aggressive and not just waiting around for like a premium hand to 3-bet, you know?
Yeah, that's good, man. So, tell me now, as you've gone through that whole final table, you played really patiently. No one wanted to bust out for other than me, I was pretty keen to bust out apparently within 3 hands, and then apparently no one wanted to bust for 3 hours. So, in that time, I think from memory when I busted, yeah, you had maybe like 20 bigs, and so
Yeah.
it does go super slow because no one wants to get out. This is where ICM seriously factors in for a lot of players. What was going through your mind during that time? Were you feeling comfortable about what your strategy was? Were you a bit stressed? Like what was going on?
I was comfortable and stressed at the same time. Like I'd always feel stressed a little bit at the final table when you don't have like a big stack, because at any hand it could be over for you. But I felt comfortable. I think towards the end of a tournament, maybe I feel more comfortable than other players in terms of what my strategy is, and yeah, I had belief that I was going to keep laddering up. I wasn't in no rush to become the chip leader. I was fine to just nurse the stack and take the spots and win chips where I can, and let other people bust out around me, and then I was going to fire for it, charge for it when we got short-handed, which is exactly what happened. Just couldn't get it all done at the end.
I can still feel the wound is fresh for you.
Yeah, like I woke up today and I still felt like a bit sore about it. Like it would have been so much nicer to win the tournament. But like I said, like I really can't complain. Like second place is incredible, and $62,000 is incredible. And if you had told me that I was going to come second before day 3 started, I would have been really stoked to hear that. So yeah, I feel really happy and grateful.
That's awesome, man. And look, from all the things you were sharing with us earlier in our episode, you're starting to get so much more experience under your belt, and I'm super stoked for you. I'm sure that other experience has definitely helped with this tournament, and there's many more coming up. So, to leave us to cap off our episode, what's the one big thing that you took from this experience that you're going to take with you to the next few tournaments?
I would say that one of the takeaways would be possibly when I was playing heads up, to focus more on my particular opponent and things that I can exploit his playing style. So I feel like I was pretty happy with the way I played heads up. I actually thought I played really good. Like there were a lot of hands that I remember that I felt like I did really well. It's just that maybe I was focusing too much on playing like a theoretically sound way of playing, and I could have been thinking more about like, what does the money mean to this guy, and how is that going to influence his playing, and what are some things that he's doing wrong that I can now exploit, because there were some things that I picked up on that I didn't actually execute at the time, and I think that may have been because I was just like so focused on playing optimally and playing like for so much money, and it was such a big spot for me. So I guess that would probably be a takeaway, just to think a bit more about like my specific opponent when I'm playing heads up, and how I'm going to alter strategy to adjust for that.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. And it's funny. I remember from one of my experiences, the 5K WSOP Sydney. This was like 2016. Yeah, 2016. I got to heads up and I finished second. And it was after not doing a deal with the other person, and I was so bitter and miserable by that, and it really it was really daunting to me for so long. The very next year, I was blessed to have the same opportunity, and I got heads up in the same tournament, and I just played so differently as a result, and ended up getting the win. So it's like, I ended up getting a chance to redeem myself. So I have absolutely no doubt that you're going to get many more chances to redeem yourself and get some outright wins. So well done, man. Congratulations, and thanks for sharing your experience with us.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure, and yeah, I'm optimistic there's going to be bigger spots in the future and hopefully more wins to come.
Thanks, man.
Cheers, Brendon.